Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to season 1, episode 2. Yes, we're gluttons for punishment. Came back for a second time, or either that, we really like drinking. So, again, we got the usual cast of characters tonight. We got Julio, we got Mike, we got Marco, who's the little circle with the mushroom in the middle of it, and then we got Nick, myself, and we have a special guest tonight. Please introduce yourself, special guest.
Hello, everybody. I am Tyson Muniz, and I'm very happy to be here. I have been in the maritime security realm for about 14 years now, multiple roles in that, from the regulatory side to the regulator to being regulated and selling my services as a consultant. So I feel like I've got a pretty well-rounded perspective on all things maritime security.
All right. Well, we're going to test you on that, see how well-rounded you are. So
very round.
Very round. Yeah. So it was interesting today. I think most of you have all seen it, was the Area Maritime Security Committee 2020 annual report that came out at the very end of 2021. It took them a very long time. Hi.
We got to do our disclosure first.
Oh yeah.
Don't forget about that.
Good call. Good call.
Good call. So all of us that are here, all
not even the lawyer picked up on that.
And the dog included in the upper right corner. We are no way being tied to representing our organizations that we respectively work for now, or have worked for in the past, or may work for in the future. So these are our own personal opinions, and please take them as such. And that's why we're able to sit here and enjoy an adult beverage, smoke a stogie, and just enjoy a good time. So yeah, this is like I said last week, this is about us just sitting around like after a conference and enjoying a drink down at the bar, talk about the conference. So, all right, where was I? We were talking about the 2020 annual report that came out at the end of 2021. We should have a 2021 annual report coming out right about now, wouldn't you think?
Yeah,
saying how the fiscal year just ended for the government, a month and a half ago?
Yeah, but everything goes slow in the government, so.
And due to COVID, I mean, they're just running behind.
Yeah,
Taglines.
How long?
It's a page a month.
Really?
It's a
To
page, it's a page
send something
a
via
month.
email?
You're not far off there, Tyson. It is about a page a month.
It's just a little over a page a month, and I'm actually astounded that's pretty fast.
Well, you know, we kind of gripe. I kind of griped about this earlier today. I was in a different I was in a conference for maritime security today, and yeah, the gripe was, why does it take so long for anybody to get anything of intelligence value out of the powers to be? You know, it's like, why send me information on a ransomware attack that happened back in March and has already been taken over by the federal government? Now you're telling me I need to go and look for the indicators? It's useless now.
A little bit of CYA there.
I could have used it back in March 15th after you put it out on March 1 or whatever the case may be.
I think here's go for it, Mike. Hey, Mike.
And mark that at 3
Mike,
minutes.
Mike,
3 minutes and 50 seconds into the podcast.
Yeah. So I think part of that, I wonder if it is a cultural thing, right? So the federal government is used to anything that's TS, SCI, or TS or secret. That stuff takes years and years and years in being revealed, right? So when all these stuff comes around and it's at the, all things cyber is either, it has some level of classification. I think that's why that stuff takes so long because you got very antsy people that are still in the culture of, we can't talk about UFOs for 50 years before, we release a video from the Navy showing something flying around that we don't know what it is, right? So I wonder if it's a cultural thing more than a necessary thing, I guess. I don't know.
I think it's a cultural thing, but in terms of bureaucracy and now Sorry, I'm from Texas, born and raised down here. We all know we speak our minds down here. So, I think my whole perspective on it is there's so much time spent on the appropriate wording for every little thing. You know what I mean? And they gotta try to make sure that the wealth is spread, as somebody mentioned previously, and make sure that everything's politically correct and all that good stuff, which I agree with to a certain degree, but it's just extremely time consuming. I think it's more that, especially for stuff like this, than anything else.
You mean the federal government is not trying to offend anybody?
Bingo.
But they're offending private industry by not sharing this stuff in a timely manner. So,
hey,
but I mean, you gotta put this in context of what this report is. This is an annual. I mean, so there's one thing where you talk about a program's annual report, and which is what this is. This is a program level. You're talking about nationwide, taking in, however much data that comes in with that. Some of us have been a part of submitting that data. Some of us have been on a part of the requesting part of it as well, saying, hey, can you guys tell us? Because we got to put this in and we forgot about it. We're supposed to get this turned in like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, right?
And you're right, Nick. I think I took a tangent. I think I took a tangent talking about just information sharing, not necessarily about the report.
And you took that personally.
So there's programmatic level reports, and then there's the information sharing, which we've talked about struggles already for that, right? And that I think that again goes back to staffing personnel and the newness of cybersecurity. Not for us, I remember 2 years ago I went to the API cybersecurity conference. It was their 14th cybersecurity conference. And I had no idea API was holding cybersecurity conferences every year.
Yeah.
And it was their 14th
I didn't know there was a cybersecurity conference here in Houston a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. So it's just things like that.
Yeah. Can you speak at it?
Everybody.
I try if I knew it was happening.
But yeah, so
I got a point on that.
Just to put this report in context, that's what I'd say is like it's a programmatic level report.
So I wasn't being fair. I got it.
It's not. You have to there's two different issues. So like the information sharing that we're talking about, trying to get it out as quickly as possible, is different from these programmatic level reports, which aren't really never going to get the detail. Annual reports are never going to get the kind of detail that you're talking about trying to get from information sharing, and that's that whole other battle of all this.
Yeah, it's basically like an executive summary of the entire year for every single sector.
And the data call, honestly, I think midsummer, I think we put our, we fed the beast to put this product out, so.
Yeah.
It does take a lot of time. And I think that information will speed up whenever you have people that are knowledgeable to pass the information back down, I think it's a learning curve, right? We're all learning the vocabulary of what we're actually dealing with now. So, you bring a piece of paper to your higher up, he's going to read it a little bit longer because doesn't fully understand what the content of each line means. So hopefully those things start to speed up. And I can say from personal experience those things are getting faster because the world is getting more exposed.
How can it get faster than this? I mean, 2020, we're a month away from December. I mean, last year's came out in December?
I have to look it up.
I think last year's came out this year.
Okay.
I think it came out in January.
It was a calendar. It was a page-a-day calendar.
I gotta say, guys, let's. I think it did have some good stuff on it.
Oh, it does.
I think that they did a good job, and I don't think. Are we saying who put out this report? Because I don't think we have.
Yeah, we can.
But
I mentioned it. There's an area maritime.
You know what I just realized? We spent
committee.
more time on the tangent about how long it took to put it out than it took for me to get a beer. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. I mean, this was released by Coast Guard Washington, D.C., I guess yesterday or today. So, but, you're right. There's a lot of good information in there, and they did a lot to kind of categorize things. And one of the things that our topic for the night was, how to translate cyber into Neptunian or to turn it into English or something like that. We have a lot of people that are now going to be responsible for cyber, and they're still trying to figure out how to spell cyber, right? It's something that they're just not, and we're bringing a whole new vocabulary and everything else. And one of the sentence in there was, there's a copious amount of information on cyber that's being shared, but there is a gap in the technical expertise to translate this information into actionable efforts. I think that that's good, but I think it's also wrong. I think it's on us as cyber, like my types, to put it in English, take it out of cyber into Neptunian or English or something like that, so that people like Mike and people like Tyson can understand what we're talking about. Hey, what are you doing up here?
Did Bandit show up?
Bandit show. We have a bandit sighting.
It's our mascot. There he is.
Here he is. Hi, Bandit. You're famous.
Can't wait for him to start rendering his opinions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know what?
Hey, he was already helping out. Yeah, he was already helping out at the guardhouse. He is our AFSO. So
let's make sure you include him on your contact list there. Got to update that.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to create his own LinkedIn account.
We are resubmitting, our FSAs and FSPs. I mean, they told us that we had to include cyber. So we're working on it. We'll put Bandit in there as the tertiary point of contact for all things security.
Yeah, and hopefully he can help with the translation piece.
I could probably understand him better than I can some of the cyber information. To be honest.
So what can people like me do to help people like you understand and make it easier for you to?
Well, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, so
Fight.
I think a really good kind of first step, I guess you could say, you had volunteered to host kind of a cyber 101, if you will, when all this stuff first came up. And one of the things that or some of the feedback that I got with that, and my own feedback to you, was your ability to relate cybersecurity concepts to physical security concepts, right? And in my mind, that's one of the key things that's needed. And let's face it, there's not a lot of folks that can do it. Being able to translate firewall into perimeter fence kind of thing, or and access points, and all these different
Give him
things.
another crayon.
Yeah, I get a crayon.
There you go.
Do I get a red one? Sweet. All right. So, but yeah, no, I mean, seriously, just being able to use, relate those things into, our common language that we talk through every single day, the whole guns, guards, gates, all that good stuff, versus, network systems, firewalls, ports. Because a lot of times when I hear port, I'm thinking literally a maritime facility versus a network port, for example, and being able to understand, a role like what a server actually does. And, there's just all these different things. It's translating into a language that we can speak. But at the same time, we need to be able to do the same thing with cybersecurity folks that we're talking to. And the onus is also on us to do our own reading, our own research, and, gain a better...
Let him out.
I'm like, well, I don't think he's talking to me, but hey.
No, your time's up, Mike.
Yeah, I know, right? I know I'm a Marine here, and I've got some issues with housebreaking, but hey.
I'm gonna put your nose in it.
No, but I think you make a good point, Mike, that layered defense, right? That's what we've always talked about in physical security. So that's, that the fact that Chris came in and translated that over into the cyber side to say, okay, it's layered defenses. It's just in a different realm, so to speak, a different vector than, what we see. So, I think that's a lot of it, but few of us on here are from the emergency management background. So how many times have you had to do a double take when you see ICS, right?
Yep.
Because emergency
What-
management, it's incident
What alphabet soup are we eating from?
That's
Exactly.
acronym list,
Yeah.
all that stuff. So industrial control system versus incident command. So it's just so things like that. At a basic level, just getting those acronym lists out there. But those Cyber 101 briefings, I think, are key. But yeah, I think that point about the layered security and drawing those parallels, Mike, that you made, I think that's one of the keys that I've seen, at least, and me personally, my experience of building from the physical to the cyber side that's where I've tried to relate it, is tried to tie it back to exactly that.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and that's exactly for me. I try to, when I'm leading this cybersecurity program, sit there and actually try to do that to the executives.
Yeah,
because they know, they're like it, like Mike, they know the physical piece of that because they've experienced driving through a gate for how many years.
Yeah,
and
Right.
and on the to the financial aspects of educating those board members and stuff is really important, because they have no concept of what they know what a gate costs, they know what a guard should be paid at, but they don't have a relevant dollar figure for how much a good cybersecurity program costs.
A lot of money.
yeah. You actually
it
that's
doesn't
a huge.
have to, but
It doesn't
but
have
at the
to.
same time, that's a huge thing, though, because if you think about it, one of the key differences, so I'll give you an example. We take pride in how much we train our security officers, right?
Mhm.
And we go above and beyond with their training. It's not just the bare minimum. So they're paid at a little bit higher rate, than many others in the industry. But if you think about it, there's nowhere near as much technical expertise and actual technical training and experience that is required to do something in Chris's world. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's a huge difference when you're talking let's say some type of cybersecurity engineer, for example, versus a security guard. They both, in broad terms, help protect things.
Mhm.
But there's a huge difference in the experience level and education and pay that needs to be recognized, which typically is not.
Well, and I think that's just part of the nature, right? Is the boom of cybersecurity. So every job in cybersecurity, you got to incentivize people to learn and get qualified and get experience. So, I'll give you a perfect example, right? I have a senior in high school, and he's looking at cybersecurity, of course. Not that I push him that way, by no means, right? But
Hey,
but
this is where the money's at.
But yeah, I told that to my financial advisor too. So hopefully they'll pay out eventually. But no, the funny thing about it is I was talking to him about cybersecurity and said, hey, actually got him talking to Marco, and Marco's like, look, maybe you don't want to do a 4-year degree. You want to have certain credentials to kick you off and then jump in the workforce, because everything's moving so quickly in the cyber world that if you spend 4 years trying to learn cybersecurity, by the time you graduate, the last 3.5 years are useless because all that stuff has already changed. So he started looking into it, and his mom is like, well, I don't know about that, not doing a 4-year degree, because that's what we were told, right? You go to college, you do your 4-year degree, and you got that piece of paper. And he comes.
I wish I'd have followed that advice.
Yeah, and
what my advice would be? Join the military,
right?
And go cyber in the military. Either because they are getting all that training, and they're coming out with experience after 4 years. Same amount of time, right?
So the point that I was going to bring up, is he comes downstairs and said, Mom, do you know that I can do a paid internship that pays $60,000 a year? A paid internship.
$60,000 for an internship?
$60,000 a year. A paid an internship. You're not even responsible for nothing. And
oh my God.
he shows those numbers to my wife, and she's like, Yeah, you're doing those certificates like Mr. Marco said. He said,
Look, my nephew, he just graduated with his 4-year degree in he got a degree in information technology with a minor in cybersecurity. He's working at help desk, making as a contractor, making $17 an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something, but still, he's gonna have to put his dues in, you know. But I mean, that you should have done that.
It took me boot camp, finish my degree, go to OCS, and probably be a 1.5 years ensign to make, I guess, somewhere around there. I don't know how much an ensign an hour is, but it's not much. It's definitely under $20 an hour, I think.
You got paid as an ensign?
I it didn't feel like it, but
Yeah.
We got paid in
pay the bills.
Hey, wait. What about those? Hey, what about those E's? Those enlisted guys? I don't want to hear nothing from you O's over there.
Well, Mike, I was going for the $17 an hour. Exemption.
Oh, there he is,
Marco.
Hey, Marco.
Hey, Marco.
I got 17 cents an hour, Julio.
I was just talking, nonsense about you. So if your ears
That's
were ringing,
okay. I could hear it.
No more Marco jokes.
It's all right, man.
Hey, we already volunteer you for some
is that
stuff,
your
so
green
just be
screen?
aware of it. We'll send you an email with it.
It's fine. I'll just delete every other one anyway.
So what are we gonna? I mean, do we have up an answer for what we're gonna do? I guess we need to go back and do more for
Tyson has
the one-on-one or the cybersecurity for dummies.
I think it's like a 49-50-51 rule here. You know, you've got to, I think it's on both sides of the fence. The cyber guys need to come with their 51, and the physical guys need to come with their 51. And
that's 102, right? Do I get a payout for that?
Yeah. That is, but the concept still applies. I've had to make up with my lack of knowledge for research. I had no idea what I was getting in whenever I got handed this world of work, and I take pride in that. What I don't have, I'll make up for with hard work. So I wake up every morning. I read Reddit's cybersecurity blog. Take a look on there. Take a look at FireEye multiple times a week. Not plugging for any of those types of things, but I've had to do extensive research. I had no idea what Shodan was until Marco pulled it up on a meeting, and I was like, wow, that's pretty scary there. How much just exists.
Yeah.
Right.
Out in the open. I'm distracted by Marco's green screen.
Yeah, man. I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying to get all teed
up.
He's trying to get situated.
So I don't know if it's necessarily like a full on translation problem. I do think that it's both sides of the fence need to come to the middle and do the extra work. You can't be handed the keys to the castle, without a little bit of work on the way.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right.
I mean, I could not agree more, man. Like when this whole thing first started, and I've been doing the whole physical security thing for a while, and they said, "Hey, guess what? Now cyber's part of your world." I kind of freaked out a little bit because I had no exposure to it, and thank God, Chris came along, and I met Marco, and I met all y'all, and I've been able to ask a lot of questions, and like you, Tyson, I've dug into stuff. I've started doing my own reading, researching. I showed the Cybersecurity for Dummies book last time. I actually have been reading that, and I'm serious.
I was at his house. He at least had it out on the table.
Well, with those crayons, Mike, I've got you some of these little Post-it notes.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. But I mean, no, seriously, so I think honestly, like I do agree, because I think it's a combination of, getting back to that whole speaking Neptunian thing, I think it is, the onus is on both sides to learn one another's language and sit down, have that conversation, because if you don't know who your cyber guy is and the cyber guy doesn't know who your physical guy is, then you're destined for failure. So get to know each other, have those conversations, start learning one another's languages. Like y'all said earlier with the acronyms and stuff, I've got a big background in emergency management too, and the ICS messed me all up. I mean, so yeah, you gotta learn all that stuff. You gotta be able to at least be able to identify what list of acronyms you go to for this, and then also I think one of the things that, and I had mentioned this once before, I think one of the things that's also kind of missing is not necessarily a comprehensive list, but at least kind of a short list. We talked about list of resources, right? Okay, there's a lot of lists of resources out there, but there's not very much, at least that I've seen, in terms of beginner level. Hey, here's where you start.
Right.
Here's where you start, physical person. This is where you can start learning these different cybersecurity principles and language and all that good stuff. You almost got to dive into the deep end and then hope you can figure it out from there.
Well, and Mike, I think you bring up. I think that's a great point. I think Marco and I started talking about this a few years back. Is how do you breach that gap? And the first thing is each side needs to have an interest. What I've come to learn, and this is, I get the opportunity to talk to CSOs and talk to CISOs and things like that. And, when you look at the different backgrounds, right, most of your physical security guys have learned physical security by experience, right? By field training. They former Marines, former Navy, former, you name it, right?
Police officers, whatever.
Police officers, they've been doing physical security for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at cybersecurity, you're not dealing. So in a lot of times, I guess here's the point I want to make. A lot of your physical security guys are based on experience. Actually, if you talk to a physical security guy and he comes over and says, "Oh, I have a PhD in physical security," everybody will laugh at his face and say, "Whatever." But in the cybersecurity realm, when you have, cybersecurity engineers, or you got IT engineers, or you got ICS, safety process, right? It's a formal education background. And, I used to have a lot of math teachers in college, and a lot of them were great. They were like Marco, and they were like Chris, where they're able to, they know a lot and they have a lot of knowledge, but they're able to dumb it down because they understand where you are at. Yeah. Now, my worst math teachers were the ones that had the PhDs, because those guys were way too smart to be able to dumb it down for somebody to understand. And that's just, the higher the education that you have, the less ability to teach a beginner you probably get. I mean, it's rare, I believe, to have a good teacher. And I find that that's the case in cybersecurity. I've talked to some, cyber guys that, man, I'm telling you, they do not know how to talk to you or try to teach you something without making you feel inferior and making you feel like you're just a dumbass. How come you don't understand this? Right?
I mean, I've seen it. Yeah.
And that keeps your.
Are you talking about Chris?
Guys away.
Oh yeah.
I'm kidding.
That's the master chief in him, though.
But no, I mean, come on. So I got a question. So I took FSO training, right? Because I wanted to learn it.
Okay, that's kind of a
both
joke,
sides. But the same thing. Here's this. What
that's
is it a requirement? Is it a requirement?
No.
That people have FSO training?
No, it's training or equivalent experience.
Knowledge.
Okay.
Yeah,
the reg states knowledge of.
Yeah.
Knowledge of.
Through training or experience. Knowledge of in blah 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 through training or experience.
Do we need to sit there and start making a basic cybersecurity training a requirement?
Yes.
But with a caveat that I'm going to sit there, I'm going to start my own business, and I'm going to be the teacher, and I'm going to make millions of dollars.
Hey, I'll help translate also.
Yeah, you bring the crayons.
Yeah.
Chris Waski's IT school for dummies.
I tell you
Yeah,
what, though,
yeah.
if we could get Mike to understand it, anybody can understand that.
Exactly. Exactly.
Don't let Mike fool you.
Yeah.
He's the kind of guy. He's the kind of guy that knows a lot. So don't let him fool
Yeah.
you.
Yeah,
That
he
whole
does.
crayons thing, he's probably got some kind of secret decoder ring on his crayon.
I was sitting there. I was doing one of those, cybersecurity training things, kind of, simplify it down. And I couldn't hardly get a word in because Mike was speaking most of the time. It's like Julio, except for when Julio's not around. So he's like, yeah, it's like this, and it's like the gates. And I'm like, okay, that's good. And it's like, okay, and we got this.
Was Mike giving you the training? Or was he just
pretty much? I said, hey, we got these vulnerabilities. He's like, yeah, this is what a vulnerability is and all this other stuff. And explaining
the only reason I could do it, Chris, is because I was trained by the best.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. Okay. Quit talking about Marco that way.
Oh,
Both of y'all.
Yeah, I mean, the big question: where do you start with cybersecurity? That's a great question. I don't know where to start.
You're exactly right.
Do we start with
Nobody
cloud?
knows.
I'll tell you this. I sent you a text earlier to all of you. It said, "Hey, I'm looking at this, buying this $240 couple of books about the Security Plus certification, and maybe trying to start working on that."
That's way above what your FSO or somebody in an organization is going to need to know.
Well,
I think my point is,
I think Mike,
where do you start though, right? Because I'm doing that research. Is where do I start?
Yeah,
like just hanging out with
and
you
that's
with
yeah,
Chris
and that's the
for
problem.
4 years. Is that the bottom line? Like
See,
just hanging out with you.
Here's what I would say for somebody that I was looking to hire as an entry-level analyst, that they would have something like Security Plus, or somebody that was working and doing the identity and access management, just an entry-level job for an organization. And that's how I treated it in another organization. So we had somebody that came over from the help desk, and they interviewed great, and we moved them from help desk to cybersecurity, and their job was to handle identity and access management. So, but to give them an understanding of information security for their job, it was a requirement they had to get Security Plus within 6 months of starting the job. So that was that, but that is actually still, I have the CISSP, and they call CISSP the size of an ocean that's 1 inch deep, and that's cybersecurity. And by the time you get done with the CISSP, you'll have just enough knowledge to be dangerous. The same thing with Security Plus. You have enough knowledge, but you're even more dangerous. It's like an ensign, right? So
that's scary.
It is scary.
Well, so here, if I can, real quick, kind of to your point, Chris, about that being way more than what the FSO would need or in an organization. I would agree to a certain extent. And the reason I say that is because, let's say, for example, in a relatively mature organization that has a relatively mature cybersecurity program, that has somebody like yourself or like Marco leading that team, there's no reason why an FSO like myself should have to get that type of certification or that type of training, because it is more in depth than what I would typically need, because that's what hey Chris, that's what, you know what I mean. But there's a lot of organizations out there. Well, yeah, okay, but you still have a team there, right? But what I'm saying is that there's a lot of organizations out there, a lot of MTSA facilities that their FSO is multifaceted. They might handle safety, they might handle operations, they might handle all these things, and they may not have a cyber person. They may not have that cybersecurity expert, yet they are held responsible for meeting cybersecurity standards. So if that's the case, who do they turn to? You see what I'm saying? Like, do they not need that level of education or that level of training or that level of knowledge? What is their base level of knowledge that they need? You see what I mean?
And that's a good question. I don't know if there's even a certification out there for that. And that's why I was talking about, I'm going to have to start up my own training program and market it and
The Wolski method.
go with Julio,
The Wolski method.
Boston
Rinse,
Whalers, and
repeat, dunk, and
no.
stuff.
I mean, literally before I had my own business. It was called 360 Degree Information Security Consulting. So
It's a long
I still,
name, Chris.
Why don't you throw the
I
website?
know,
long.
but I shortened it down to ISC, 360
It's been a
ISC.
circle.
So it's a circle with an ISC in the middle.
Not a triangle.
I can see Marco's money signs on his eyes right now. You know,
Yeah.
he's already
Right.
writing.
Like, hey man, just do that.
So let me ask you guys.
So train the FSO. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, let the guests speak.
Would you
Come
guys be
Yeah, no
opposed
kidding.
to making that a regulatory requirement? Say they codify exactly what the FSO needs to know in the cyber realm.
They haven't even really done that. Okay, so
I'm saying this is a hypothetical question.
Yeah.
I think
all right,
that's
that's
a
opening a
big
whole
question.
other can of worms. That's opening
I
a
think
whole
that's
other
for
can
Nick,
of worms.
the lawyer, to answer that question.
Yeah, law school.
So do you want
Come
it?
on, Lob.
Yeah,
right.
come on, Nick.
Yeah.
So you're gonna start with the whole regulatory process, right? So what begins with that, right? They've got to actually do the notice of proposed rulemaking. They've got to go through all the studies about what kind of cost that's going to impose on the people that it affects the most. So are you willing to say that that's, again, so we're getting back to cost, right?
Burden, right?
So-
Burden costs, right?
So the cost of, if we say that this training is required for everybody, what is that going to cost for all the people that we're going to enforce this upon? Now, some, depending on who's in charge of writing the regulations at the time, some people are okay with that, and some people aren't, right? So in the previous administration, we saw there was a 2-for-1, right? If you were going to start a new regulation, you had to get rid of 2. That's not the case with the current, administration, but you'd still have to go through the regulatory process. And that regulatory process includes a full disclosure of what the, economic analysis is on a regulatory change. And so that's why you see things like, guidance comes out that doesn't necessarily have to go through, regulatory guidance as opposed to changes in the regulations that comes out, because it doesn't necessarily need to go through the same level of scrutiny that, creating a new law or regulation does. But I think it's time to have that serious conversation about, is it worth delving deeply into that? Because one, does MTSA really even fit cybersecurity? Because we've seen on the international realm where they went, IMO chose to go through the safety, the safety side of things. IMO rolled out cybersecurity through the safety management systems, not through security. So does that mean that we need to look at that on the maritime side through something other than MTSA? I don't know, but I think there's some people that are, seriously exploring that right now. Now, the conversations may not be on the public, but I think those conversations are going on right now. And, just this even comes back to the original point of, this whole report that came out. Do we need to have a separate report now that's focused on cybersecurity as opposed to a general port security, port security annual report? Does there need to be a maritime cybersecurity report that comes out annually?
And even take that one step further and get rid of the, and take cyber out of the port security grant process and make it a separate thing.
There you go. And that's, that's another great question that's being bandied around right now.
Let me add on that. And I know I talk too much. I know. But like today,
that was a great question by our guest. I will give you that, Tyson. Way to moderate as the guest.
Yes.
Today,
I'll turn the reins over.
Today, the CSA director, Jen Easterly was doing a testimony this morning to Congress, and she kept saying over and over and over again. What was that, Chris?
Sorry.
What port did she release information on?
She did not release any information.
Okay.
No names were spoken. But she kept mentioning over and over again that cybersecurity is a team sport, and what I would like to hear beyond cybersecurity is a team sport. I think security, period, is a team sport. I don't think that we need We don't need to. Cybersecurity and physical security is already divided, right? You got two different silos already. That's just the nature of the beast. I think we need to get to a point to where there is a discussion regarding security. Okay. And I think, if we look at the attack mode or the strategy from our adversary, they're looking at security as a whole. They're not looking at cybersecurity and physical security. They're looking at how do we do espionage and how do we get cybersecurity to help that espionage physical security component. And they're being pretty successful at it, I believe. So we have to get to that point to where we're not talking physical security and talking cybersecurity. We need to get to a point to where we're talking security, because the reality is it's a combination of both. Somebody today, I was having a conversation earlier about, does the physical security guy has to work for the CISO? Or does the CISO works for the physical security guy? I said, no.
Well, that's been a debate for years.
Right. We need to get to a point to where we have a company security officer, period. And both the physical security guy and the cybersecurity guy work for that company security officer. And he's the one that melts everything together. It needs to be one department. It can't be separate. And I tell you, everybody's struggling with that, in my view. Even CSI is struggling with that. If you look at their products, it's like
cybersecurity industry itself is struggling with that.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, the security industry. I mean, but at the same time, Julio, I think you're hitting the nail on the head, because it should be a holistic approach. I mean, we talk about security in depth. We talk about layered security. It really should be a holistic approach to protection of assets, right? That's what it's all about. Protection of assets, and your assets, that's your people, your property, all that good stuff, right?
Information.
How do you do that? It's yeah, exactly. How do you do that? You do it through layered security, through a holistic approach. And yes, I believe you are absolutely right. There needs to be that guiding CSO, company chief security officer, whatever you want to call it, and both the physical and the cyber, they work side by side in tandem, reporting to that way they have the same strategy, they have the same goal, and they're not separated. It's not silos, because everything in this world is siloed as it stands. It's part of one of the biggest problems that we have these days.
Well, and to break it down into something that most people know, physical security, right? Your gate guards don't have the same education as your police officers. Your police officers don't have the same education as your investigators, right? But they all know about each other. They all talk to each other.
Yeah.
They all
and they know where they fit.
Other. Correct. Yeah. And we need to get to that point, to the cybersecurity and physical security convergence, where you have when you're going to buy an asset, or when you're going to protect an asset, you got to have the guy that's looking at the physical security side, right? How am I going to protect anybody from physically accessing this server? But then you also, as important as your cybersecurity guy, that's going to say, how am I going to prevent people from electronically or virtually access this server, right? And those two need to be combined together.
But how do we accomplish that?
Tyson, I think that's for you.
Yeah.
There you go, Tyson. You're queued up.
You're it.
Good job, Julio.
Yeah.
Tyson goes,
I like that.
What's my solution for all that?
But even then, Tyson, I'll even throw a wrinkle in it. How do we do it for any size of organization, whether it's the mom and pop to the size of Shell?
Yeah.
Yeah. Next question. I'm going to call a friend.
Call a friend. Call Marco.
I'm going to call Marco. Hey,
yes. The answer is yes.
Marco, how do I solve all the world's problems?
What we're doing here.
I think when you guys asked me to come on this, I was brainstorming on some points that I wanted to bring up. The other question and that I brought up. Would you guys like to see these types of standards become regulatory standards for our industry? And I think that's a worthy discussion. Another one is we don't know what our enemy looks like, and you've got to have that balance between being accessible and being guarded at the same time. So I was thinking to my past experience at my previous employer, where we're not fighting a uniformed enemy here. Peggy in accounting is on the front lines. She doesn't have a dog in the fight, except for she wants to make sure she gets paid on Friday. And if the boss's email pops up and says, "Hey, I need you to download this and print it off for me," she's probably going to do it. That's scenario happens every single day at companies all across the U.S. I think that our world's changing so fast now that it's going to be hard to keep up with. So to come back to my other point of how do I fix this? I think we collectively we work together all the time. I think we're doing the best job that we possibly can. I can only assume that this is happening in small little groups all over the U.S. with people of our backgrounds that are having these conversations. And if not, hopefully they see us do it and start to copycat, because I think this is where we're really leading the way amongst our little peer group here. So
yeah, let Houston figure it out. We're figuring it out.
I mean, they always say, Houston, we have a problem, and then they expect us to figure it out, right?
Yeah. So I don't have a perfect answer for you for how do we fix all this, but
here's the thought.
We're ahead of the curve because we're asking the questions.
Here's a thought on that, and I think the Coast Guard report talked about that. Is there's only a handful of cybersecurity subcommittees that have been added to the 8 different 46 AMSCs that we have. That's sad. We've been talking about cybersecurity for Marco 4 years at least.
You guys laid the groundwork for that best practice,
right? So we need to. That's the first part that needs to be fixed. You're absolutely right, Tyson. That there needs to be an interest in addressing cybersecurity. I think the other part, which props to Director Easterly, it's a team sport. Everybody needs to take initiative to make this happen, because more than 80% of the critical infrastructure of the United States is owned by the private industry. The federal government doesn't own critical infrastructure no more, right? The government doesn't own the majority of the critical infrastructure. So, right. So I think private industry needs to take an approach as a team effort to improve cybersecurity and to take the initiative and lean forward. Because if I'll be honest with you, here's my personal thought, okay? Nothing to do with my employer or future employers or past employers.
This is going to be good.
We need to can that disclaimer and have it running on the
Needs to be a
There we go. Oh, hold on. I can do that.
I think
it needs like a banner, right across the bottom.
Yeah.
This will be Fox headline news banner across the bottom.
There you go.
If we lose private industry critical infrastructure as a country, if we would have simultaneous attacks to Colonial Pipeline, a maritime port, you name it, at the same time, as a country, we're going to be in deep trouble. And I think private industry needs to understand that it's no longer just about making money. It's no longer just about having a profitable business. It's about the nation. Right now, private industry owns the resources of the nation, the economy, the lifelines, community lifelines, your water, your power. Your oil and gas. Good job, Chris, with putting the banner.
Do not necessarily. No, just do not.
So they
take out necessarily. Sorry.
So you don't. So I think private industry leadership in the private industry needs to be leading cybersecurity, leading security of our nation. The security of our nation. The majority of it, the way I see it, the majority part of our security as a nation it's up to private industry to protect it, in addition to protecting their business, right?
Yeah.
Well, let me expand on that.
I know that's
a little
big,
bit,
but
Julio.
I don't know.
Yeah, I
Go
mean,
ahead.
but here's something that I talked about earlier today at the conference I was talking about. We're all, proud to be American, and especially after there's some sort of disaster, whether it be like 9/11, which impacted us as a nation, or if it's a regional disaster such as a natural disaster, hurricane, major earthquake, or something like that. Everybody's all in. The community's all involved. Everybody's looking out for their neighbors. We're running down the street, checking the doors of our neighbors to make sure they're all okay and stuff like that. We get that, and then we lose it. How do we instill that within the security community to sit there and say, we are all one? We are a team. We fight as one, and we win as one, and we defend as one. How do we do that and get people to know and trust, that Coast Guard's not going to come down and swack us because, hey, here's a ticket for $500,000 because, you got a business email compromise and stuff like that. We need to have the larger Coast Guard organization to feel like, to give us the feeling that they're part of the team and not just the referees on the field. The other thing I look at is, Coast Guard, one of the major things that everybody knows Coast Guard for is their search and rescue, right? The capabilities to go out, rescue mariners at sea, and those types of things. I know they're working on that, the cyber protection teams and all that, but make it so they're more appear to be like those SAR search and rescue teams than, the regulators that come around and say, well, you should have known that fence was too short, and here's, an $8,000 fine because you should have known. And it doesn't match up with your, security plan. We need to sit there and get somebody to be the big brother and help us all. And it needs to be larger than what it is now. I know Coast Guard's trying to do it with the CPTs, but it's ineffectual. I mean, even CISA is trying to do it, and it's ineffectual because there's not enough teams to sit there and assist. And now that, TSA and then Congress throwing out legislation saying, hey, if you don't share information and you don't tell us when you have a cyber incident, we're going to smack you upside the head and say, give us some money. And then we'll take you to court and let you be sued civilly for that. So, I mean, again, I don't know. I'm sorry, soapbox. I'm off.
So just, I'm not trying to cut you out. So this is what I would say, and this is what I would ask to the group. I know we're getting close to the end, so this is what I ask to the group and to our dozens of viewers that we have so far.
Yeah.
I know, isn't it great?
Subscriber number 11 right here.
Yeah. So this is what I would ask, and it's right there in the report, right? Is TSIs, transportation security incidents, right? So we were able to focus after 9/11 on physical attacks, and we were able to translate over into what it would be in the maritime realm. And we came up with transportation security incidents as the term, and that is what area maritime security plans are built around. That is what a lot of things are built around, is what would mitigate or prevent a transportation security incident. So that's what I would ask to the group. This is what I would ask to anybody viewing it. What does a cyber transportation security incident look like? And that's called out in that report we talked about today. How do we put that into area maritime security plans? But what exactly does that look like? And I think once we can agree upon some basic models of what a cyber TSI looks like, I think that'll get us a lot further to getting to the point of some of these things that we're talking about right now. So I see you have your hand raised, Mike. So
teacher. Dude, you bring up a fantastic point. It's something that we've all been talking about for quite a while now. Here's my I guess response / concern with that. I personally, and again, I have limited experience. I'm throwing that out there with the whole cyber thing. I personally don't see a cyber TSI. I see cyber as an attack vector for a potential TSI to occur. You see what I'm saying?
And if that's the answer, then that's great. Yeah.
I mean, because like if you think about it, right? So a TSI, the definition of a TSI is basically significant loss of life, significant impact to the economy, significant environmental damage, right?
And economic impact.
I thought I said economy. My bad. If I did,
you did.
Oh, I missed it.
Okay, cool. It's okay. You never pay attention to me, Tyson. I still love you though. But no, I mean, like seriously, if you think about it, that's what a TSI is, right? Okay, so if that's the case, really, cyber is more an attack vector than it can be a TSI, right? At least that's the way I see it. And if that's the case, then we need to be treating it as such. And that goes back to Julio's comment about a holistic approach to security, right? I mean, I mean, that's at least that again, that's the way I see it. I mean, we sorry, go ahead.
So the scenarios that they build those plans around, there's different scenarios, right? So that may absolutely be the case, that it's just a vector that causes a kinetic, a physical manifestation that is a TSI. But is there something that's going to happen out there that doesn't necessarily manifest itself in a physical kinetic nature that the maritime industry needs to be aware of as a possible, security incident that could happen through the vulnerabilities that they have at their ports? And I think that's one of the main concerns. I think that's what concerns actually most of the people that I've talked to on the maritime side, is that they're absolutely fine with what you're talking about, Mike, with that. Hey, just because it was caused by somebody getting into the system and letting somebody in that wasn't supposed to, they changed somebody's ID access and they got into a system, and now physically they were able to, physically get in and do something. They can deal with that, because at the end of the day, it's a physical manifestation of it, and they can deal with it from that point. But when it's still just kind of floating out there, kind of a nebulous thing that's going on that you can kind of relate to what you're seeing, which again, the pipeline attack with Colonial, I think was the biggest thing where it was really never that well defined, at least not publicly, about what was going on, but you could see it out there.
Yeah.
The impact was there.
And you know what? And to Mike's point, cyber security as a whole, right? It's a holistic effort. Colonial Pipeline. So I used to agree with, although I have my reservations, but I used to agree with the thought process of cyber is a vector to cause a bigger or a physical incident, right? That people feel. But Colonial Pipeline make me think, go back and say, you know what? Cybersecurity is not a vector. Cybersecurity is an attack. That was a cyber TSI. There was no physical. The oil wasn't spilling outside of the pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
All
it did. Economic.
It was an economic. So financial. It was an attack. It was an attack on the economy.
Yeah.
So cyber is no longer a vector. It was an actual. That's an attack. It's a type of attack. It's not a vector to cause a physical. It can be a vector to cause a physical impact, like a spill or a ship running aground or something like that. But it is an attack. It's not just a vector.
Because if a state actor had carried that attack out and taken credit for that attack, that would be an act of terrorism or an act of warfare, correct?
I don't think that's defined. We talked about it in the last episode.
That's part of the problem with cyber.
There's no definition about what constitutes an act of war when you're talking about cybersecurity. That's not defined. I don't think Congress have thought. I mean, maybe they've thought about it, but they haven't defined it. I think we're years away from being able to define that, because the first problem is assigning blame. It's very difficult to do in the cyber world. But imagine this, and think about it. We know Russia is after our stuff. We know the Chinese are after our stuff. Chinese are very vocal about they want to be the number one in the world, right? And they have done a pretty good job over the last 50 years or so of stealing every single thing that we do. And they were smart enough to create an economical incentive to have all the American companies to go build their stuff over there on their end. And because of that, they got access. That was they took an economical hit, but now they own all that information. Yeah. They own all that proprietary stuff, and now they're making it cheaper, right? That's why, you can either buy your Beats headphones, or you can buy the cheap Chinese brand of it, because that costs you, probably 60% or 70% less than it would cost the original stuff. Because guess what? They didn't have to do the research. They didn't have to invest in research. They didn't have to invest on process. They stole it all. So therefore, their investment was very minimal. Therefore, they don't have to sell it as expensive, because they're already getting it plenty of profits, because they stole all the information. So again, I go back to private industry needs to understand their position here. National security right now, in my eyes, is owned by private industry. Right? Private industry needs to. It's not just defending themselves and their products. They're defending the economy and the security of our nation. That's a big thing, but I believe it's a reality. Just looking at the news and looking at all these articles that keep coming out about, how we're being overtaken economically and dominated by other countries, especially China with their products.
Well, it goes back to Sorry, go ahead.
Can you go ahead and wrap it up there, Nick?
I'll just say, so now that comes back to the whole public-private partnerships, right? That we're trying to that are going to be the key to success for all of this, right? So these conversations that we're having here, but also some of these groups like the MTS ISAC, ICE House, ONG ISAC. That are out there, these information sharing analysis centers. So that goes back to what we talked about in the beginning about that more immediate information sharing. And I think that's, that may be the next discussion. Maybe we talk to somebody from there, and I know we've all got contacts in those organizations to maybe bring them in here and try to get some more thoughts out there about how we solve that problem. Because you're exactly right. If we're not talking across to the private side of things, we're never going to get anywhere with this. Yeah. I totally agree with you there, Julio. So great point.
And so there we have it. We'll lead it off for our next show. Hopefully in 2 weeks we'll have episode 3. And I appreciate everybody's time, and thank you so much, Tyson, for taking time this evening and joining us. I don't know what happened to Marco. I guess he had his clock ran out on his cellular card or something. But,
thank you very much for having me.
He was having technical difficulties.
I got to ask real quick, Tyson, what do we got going on there in the background? What's the vehicle you got in there behind you?
Oh, this is it's a family car. It is my 1964 Ford Fairlane 500 4-door. It was brand new, owned by my great-grandmother, and my dad restored it in the 2000s era. And then after I finally got established, got out of the military and stuff, I got to bring it to my house to make room for his other projects. So now it's mine. So
do you get to drive it?
Oh yeah, it runs, it drives. I've
never seen you in it.
Disc brake conversion in it. It's hot. It's really hot. It doesn't have air conditioning. So if you guys can
see it does. It's called 460.
That little window right there popped out is at angles forward so that it draws air in. So Julio drove it.
It's 260. It's
Julio drove it one time. It's fun. Yeah.
It's a fun car to drive. I have to admit it.
Yeah.
Does it have power steering?
No.
Oh wow.
No.
That was a resounding no.
Yeah.
So all right.
Thanks,
all right, guys.
Thank you very much for having me. Anytime you want me, I'll be here for y'all. And
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, seriously, appreciate you coming.
All right, guys. And to all our audience, thank you for watching. And that's a wrap for this episode of Maritime Security Talk. See you next time. And again, a quick reminder, these are opinions that are our own personal opinions and do not necessarily reflect those of our employers or present employers, past employers, future employers, or any employers that we may ever have or have ever had. So keep that in mind. We thank you again for listening, and for this college students that have been told that this is mandatory to watch, give us some ideas. What do you want to hear?
Seriously.
You can email us at marsectalk@gmail.com. We actually have an email.
Oh, we have an email now?
marsectalk@gmail.com. All right. That's all we got for today. And again, thank you all. Y'all have a good night. And